Alright guys, Gladiator is one of the newest releases from Marvel Crisis Protocol. I've played 10 games with him. I will probably pick some sort of clickbait title like, I played 10 games of Gladiator so you don't have to, in this video to kind of tell you how good he is. And if you don't want to watch my video and you hate looking at me and you just want to make an angry comment down below, he's fine. Character's fine. If you want to know a little bit more in depth, we're going to carry forward. So let's talk about Gladiator and what he does, and then we'll get into what I played, and then we'll kind of talk about all the little intricacies of playing Gladiator. So Gladiator is based around the confidence mechanic. Generally how it works is when he takes his Praetor Punch, he gets one confidence token. When he does his charge and deals damage, he can get another confidence token. He loses a confidence token when he takes damage of any kind. At the time of recording, the window in which you lose confidence tokens is unclear. The confidence does not say when it triggers or even that it is a trigger. So there's kind of two camps right now. Either you treat it kind of like power from damage, where you get it, where you gain or lose confidence in that window, where like the second damage happens to you, it's not a trigger, it's just pulls confidence. Or you treat it like a trigger, like an after the attack is resolved trigger. And the argument for doing it that way is that almost everything in the game that has ever not had a timing window gets this timing window eventually. So things like Sam's leadership got that timing window, and there's a couple other examples in the past. This can kind of matter for like being dazed. Gladiator has some number of confidence. So let's say he charged in on turn one, got his 2 confidence tokens. Then somebody comes over and one-shots him, just does 9 damage to him. Does he lose a confidence token, or does he start with 2? Because you can't have tokens removed from you when you're dazed, but is it pulled before he dazes or after? This gets even more ridiculous when you think about something like Nightcrawler Spender killing him, where he might do 5 attacks, but every one of those after the attack is resolved triggers would happen before the defenders after the attack is resolved triggers. So if this is an after the attack is resolved trigger, he could have 5 confidence tokens. Nightcrawler could kill him with a single spender that ends up being 5 attacks and kills Gladiator, and then he could wake up with 5 confidence tokens depending on how this is ruled. I played it like it was after the attack is resolved trigger, but had an eye on it the entire time that I played, and it only came up a couple times, because a couple times that he was dazed in my 10 games. So he wasn't dazed every game, and a couple of times that he was dazed on 0 confidence tokens. But I do think it needs a ruling. I have never had it be like him dying to a rapid fire where it like cost him 2 or 3 confidence tokens and had that significantly impact a game. That being said, I kept an eye on it. I do think it will matter. I don't think it changed my game specifically. I was just lucky in that way. All right, so let's talk about the list I played. And I'm going to try not to do a huge, like, gigantic breakdown of this list, because it's not about this goofy Avengers list that I played. But essentially, every game I was forcing Gladiator because I wanted 10 games of Gladiator as soon as I could. So I played a Captain America Steve Rogers shell, Steve 1. So Steve 1, Sam, Hulk, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Dr. Voodoo, of course Gladiator, Luke Cage, Okoye, Iron Man 1. And I played a smattering of the Good Team Tactics cards. Most importantly for our discussion here are Brace and Sacrifice as my restricteds. And then I also played Protector of the Empire, one of Gladiator's 2 cards. And then my crises were like very fighting oriented, Intrusions, Deadly Meteors, Wedding Party. And then extracts were Deadly Legacy, Hammers, and Inhuman Weapons. All right. So ways to build around Gladiator, and the reason that I put him in this category. I think there's 3 main pillars of things that Gladiator needs to be successful. I think you need to be able to do 2 of these pillars consistently for it to be a good pick. So, number 1, protection. Bodyguards, eye in the sky. lifesaver, stuff like that. Stuff that prevents Gladiator from being attacked and prevents him from losing his tokens. Top contenders would be Steve, which I played, but I think you can also play an Inhuman's Black Bolt Shell because he's a leader with Bodyguard, and She-Hulk, who's a leader with Bodyguard. And I think like all three of those are really good like inclusions in them. If your leader already does protection, great place to start. Next, I think you need to some way to cheat power onto him. Turning his charge on turn 1 greatly changes the number of confidence tokens he can build because he's a medium base, medium mover with a range 3 attack. Means that he charges significantly past the midline or significantly past punching the midline, which means that he can potentially build 3 confidence tokens on turn 1, which can radically change how much confidence he builds across an entire game. Conveniently, the top 3 contenders in this category also happen to be Steve, She-Hulk, and Black Bolt. Steve gives lower charge or reduced cost and superpowers. She-Hulk, if any of your other characters take damage on turn 1, you can give the She-Hulk proc power to Gladiator, and then Gladiator has his charge online. And then Black Bolt can shuffle power around with his leadership to enable a turn 1 charge. The last pillar is dice consistency. Gladiator, until he builds confidence tokens, has no kinds of dice consistency, and really, like, his dice consistency is the the theory of quantity is a quality all its own. So like rolling 8 dice means that you are more likely to get hits. So things you can do in this category that I think also kind of fit into some of the other categories could be like Red Skull 3 can give him more output. You have to be careful about taking the damage from the thing. If you like whiff it, you can end up losing your confidence tokens. Shield, I think, is a really good place to do this because you can play Double Bubble, which gives him double rerolls, and it gives him the reroll defenses, which can, like protect him. And then you also have like Eye in the Sky as a way to protect him. Cool. So in those categories, I do think Steve, She-Hulk, and Black Bolt are probably the 3 main places you will see him played. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a shield build running him or some kind of like goofy Red Skull thing or just something that I haven't thought of that leans more on the dice consistency and the like giving him constant defensive rerolls. Like in Web Warriors. Like it's kind of tough because Web Warriors is like, it's not a thing he doesn't do anything that they really want. But yeah, I think those are the 3 main homes you will find him in. Things he is hard countered by. Trap House is probably the number one. Like the Goblin, Trap House, like ticky-tack damage everywhere. Because anything that triggers a damage on him will peel a confidence token. So my favorite example of like the worst case scenario for Gladiator is like Gladiator with a confidence token charges Electro. So you're like, okay, 7-die punch, but you land your charge. Electro uses his tricks and traps to deal a damage. You're back down to your core 6. Okay, you punch him. You get your 2 confidence tokens. He does his counterattack thing or his like weird parting shot where you take 1 damage. Okay, peel a confidence token back down to 7 dice. And then he also shocks you back down to 6 dice. And then if you punch him again, he can peel your confidence again. And then like all the different various versions of that, whether it's the, you got Bullseye, you've got Mysterio, you've got Cassandra Nova, like any kind of ticky-tack trap damage sucks. By extension, bleed counts for this. So if you can make him bleed, he will just strip a confidence from himself every turn at the end of his activation. Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire makes multiple small attacks typically. So it means a single attack action can potentially peel 2 confidence from him. Another weakness of Gladiator is that he's also size 2. And so while it's nice that you can like still hide him some places and all the bonuses that come with size 2, is anybody that can throw characters can throw Gladiator, which means they can do an auto point to him through no matter how many bodyguards you put up. It's part of why playing Brace is important here, because sometimes you can play Brace just to keep confidence tokens going, as well as just like kind of prevent damage, obviously. Brace still an incredible card. But it means that like Storm, who normally like struggles to interact profitably with 6 threats, can interact like pretty gosh darn profitably with Gladiator. And then we already talked about this a little bit, but like Zemo is a great counter to Gladiator in that he has both counter strike and he makes him bleed. Yeah, and parting shot, any kind of those little chip damage really wrecks him. So with that being said, what does Gladiator actually like to do on the table? He wants to fight little guys. He is a big old bully. He wants to go pick on a bunch of little dudes and build his confidence up and kill them and strip their objectives and just like create attrition advantage until he has a bunch of confidence tokens, and then he can start killing big pieces. Because like with enough confidence, you can fight anyone. How did we accomplish this? So a big way that I did it was I had like redundant bodyguards. So we have Steve protecting him. We also had Okoye if I could afford the splash. And then we had Luke in Heroes for Hire. And then we also had Sacrifice. So it meant that we're playing this kind of like Gordian knot style of protecting Gladiator's activation and his confidence tokens and trying to leverage him into a big win or big swings. Problem with doing this is that it's very dice reliant. You're gonna miss your charge. A 6-die charge into a def 3 misses a little bit more than 1 in 5. So your first charge will miss in a tournament, probably. Like if you play at like a full tournament, a full 4-round tournament, your first charge of the game will probably miss at least one of those rounds. That's rough. And it can be hard to play your way out of that. I think it's possible to play your way out of that, but I do think, especially in Avengers, it's hard to justify him over Hulk.
What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
What's in the box?
So we're keeping him in the defensive bubble, but also we are looking to project threat onto the midline. So I'm trying to play either extracts or secures that force the opponent to come to the midline and hopefully get 2 attacks on them with Gladiator to end round 1. Hopefully building me 3 confidence, and then I can start taking some 9-die attacks and really putting damage out. Because Gladiator's like pattern of play, he has a lot of really flex. So even though he's a character that like essentially just attacks and deals damage, he has a lot of different intricate ways to kind of like flow down his decision making. So you always really want to be making Praetor Punch attacks, but to like build confidence up. But once you have confidence, you don't want to be making Praetor Punch attacks. You want to be using the spender, either of the 2 spenders, either to generate more than his 2 attacks a turn, or to make 1 big attack to really go up over the top of like the beefy boys. And then the other thing about Gladiator is as his confidence rises, his ability to create power also rises. So like it makes his throw and his charge more accessible, as well as his spender more accessible. Because when you have 5 confidence, you're making an 11-die attack, the likelihood that that attack generates you enough power to access your throw is almost guaranteed. And depending on your current power situation, can access, like your beam in your throw or your spender in your throw. He has a really interesting dynamic with power and with attacking multiple things. Another important thing with Gladiator that I have found in my games is that it's often very important to kind of, at least in the early turns of the game, is treat him like he is, like a Wolverine or a Goblin, where he can't interact with extracts. You really don't want to pick up extracts on Gladiator because there's like this thing about Gladiator where your opponent, to keep your confidence down, has to strip attacks to put on him to keep your confidence low. If those attacks are also furthering the scoring points game, you're not accomplishing everything that you possibly could. Or like you're making it easy for your opponent to be efficient with their decision making. I've got to strip confidence from Gladiator so that he doesn't just murder me. And he's got an objective, so let's just like make that the objective that we're going to try to take off. You don't want to make those attacks appetizing. And so try not to pick up extracts on him early. You're still looking to go take their extracts with Gladiator to try to like get their extracts loose, and so you may end up picking up one when you can. But I don't think you really want to pick up an extract early on him, essentially ever. I'm sure there'll be exceptions, but try not to make it easier for your opponent to be able to do both things at the same time. I didn't personally play it, but speaking of objectives, Gladiator is, at least on paper, because I didn't play it, really bad at cubes. Cubes are another thing that will strip a confidence in the power or in the cleanup phase. That would suck. It would suck real bad. The extra power he likes, but like not as much as he likes having his confidence. And because again, each cube is an individual instance. So if he's holding 5 cubes, has 5 confidence, would lose all 5 confidence in the cleanup phase. My best games with Gladiator were on hammers. Twice he essentially single-handedly won me lost games on hammers. And so there's this interesting thing that can happen with Gladiator where Gladiator can kind of like become your win condition when a game is going very badly, or maybe even not when a game's going badly. Maybe a game is really going your way attrition-wise, and you're going to make Gladiator your win condition rather than trying to play the objective. I had a game against Midnight Suns where I didn't fully respect the level of threat they put to the midline. I lost Widow to like a random blade attack on turn 1, and then she KO'd turn 2, and had really similar things happen with all my other models. But Gladiator was largely ignored. He was killing all of my stuff that wasn't Gladiator. And it's a hammers game. And Gladiator managed to spike a hammer off of Namor, and then like one-shot Ghost Rider. And managed to collect all the hammers because, again, he is this machine that can like slowly roll out of control if you can't stop him. And hammers is already a scenario like that. So Gladiator was able to get all 4 hammers, get dazed, and then wake up, kill the thing that dazed him, and have all 4 hammers again. So in that game, he killed Blade from Full on both sides. He killed Namor on both sides except for maybe 1 hit point. He killed 3 sides of Ghost Rider, because Ghost Rider played Deal with the Devil, killing a full health Wong, and Gladiator killed the front side of him twice and the back side of him once. And a game where I was like down 5 or 6 threat after turn 2, Gladiator just like single-handedly won because he got to have 5 confidence and have 4 hammers and make 19 die spenders that just one-shot 5 threat characters. So, where do we land on Gladiator? I think Gladiator, since everybody or lots of people are buying this pack for the cards anyway, or to have nice versions of the Crisis cards, I do think he is a thing that people should kind of like play around with. And I think he is really fun to pilot. I don't really enjoy being on the other side of the table from Gladiator. I find his design really frustrating and kind of like bad game design. But it's calling it bad game design is like too reductive. It is more like a school of game design that I don't ascribe to. I think it is most similar in the gaming world to like Call of Duty when Call of Duty was reinvented for Modern Warfare. And if you don't play it, I'm going to explain it real quick. Just stick with me here. Modern Warfare had a system of like kill streaks. So when you got a couple kills in a row, you got a perk that made it easier for you to get another kill. Or like, so as you were doing well, you got more cool things to help you do well. And it created this like flow state that was really fun and really addictive to try to get into. Because it was really addictive and really fun to get into, it kept players coming back and back and back and kind of like constantly chasing those high highs. The counter argument to that being a good game design decision is that if this is too tuned in one direction, the first one to get like 2 or 3 kills has a significant advantage and can keep it becomes a snowball and keeps rolling it downhill as they get more and more and more and more stuff for free and can kind of take over a game. I don't think that's particularly great design in Marvel Crisis Protocol. I mean, this part of when I talk about like my frustration with the Hammers Crisis is like exactly this kind of design issue where like everyone likes hammers because you go, you get the objectives, and you get an immediate in-game reward, and it feels great, and it's like a really fun and addictive game loop that keeps you coming back and playing hammers, even when maybe you shouldn't, and even maybe when your faction isn't particularly good at hammers. But creating those out of control, your opponent gets on top of you and you can't get them off of you game states is a thing you have to be really careful with. And so as a result, Gladiator's game design kind of scares me in that way. But ultimately, I think he kind of lands in a place where he is okay. I think he is balanced enough in a way that, like, he is a character that can dominate games, and when you play him, you are kind of making the entire game about him. Or at least you're saying, as the player playing him, that's what I want to do. I'm going to try to make this game about Gladiator, and if I can wield Gladiator in a way where he makes enough impact, that's going to be what the game is about. And you, as a player, are going to try to limit his control, or his impact. I think this is going to ascribe to a very specific type of player, either like, you know, like a roll them bones style player, or like the ultra mega aggressive player. Like if you were a Malekith style player, like that loved original Malekith, Gladiator might be a thing you might want to take a good hard look at. But is Gladiator broken? I don't think so. When you compare him to how Thor 2 was released, Thor 2 is just like laughably stronger than the guy. He just like has more output, unless like Gladiator has just way more confidence tokens than he probably should. But, and I still kind of argue that Thor 2 is so hard to explain because, like, a lot of what limits his damage is whether he can access his kit. If he can access his kit, he has a lot of damage. If he can't access his kit, he doesn't have, like, he has very little damage he struggles to do his threat worth of work and, like, doesn't have play on turn 1. Gladiator does have play on turn 1 and is really easy to enable with leaderships. I think ultimately we won't see a ton of him at the high-end competitive play, but I do think he is a really interesting curveball to throw into a list that like can kind of pivot. So like playing something like an A-Force scenario team that when it gets its secures or extracts, depending on how you build it, whether you're a steel focused or a throw you off the points focused or however you want to build it, and then being able to pivot into, I have 2 6 threats that are very, very dangerous, and I kind of control where damage goes because I have 2 in-faction bodyguards. One of them is my leader, and the other costs 2 threat. I think can create a really interesting pivot in the list that is not exactly like being dual affiliated, but can like feel that way. Oh my God, we didn't talk about the TTC. Protector of the Empire is a crazy TTC. It doesn't seem as impactful as it actually is when you read the text, because you're like, oh, it's 3 power. It's a 3 power got your back as a tactics card. Like, their characters to just have this as a superpower. Like, is this worth a tactics card? It is worth a tactics card. The free medium move and an extra attack out of Gladiator can be enormous. And then also when you're playing, because Gladiator naturally makes you want to play like this defensive ball scenario, that like Gladiator building a bunch of confidence and failing to kill something or leaving something low means that like a specific bodyguard or sacrifice play can end that character's activation out of nowhere. And even if you didn't put them low, Like if Gladiator builds his max tokens, and then you are like, okay, well my full health Zemo is going to charge in, Master Swordsman, attack him, and you're like sack to 1 health Sam or bodyguard with Steve, or play Heroes for Hire on a low health Luke Cage, and have that character die, and then just like one shot Zemo with your 11 die counter attack, can be really, really terrifying and really hard to like unpick cleanly. And because he's range 3 and he gets a medium move, means it comes from like farther away than a 5-stick. So you just got to be careful with it. So those are my opinions on Gladiator, but you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have you played games with Gladiator? Is Gladiator a problem? Is he too strong? Do you think this design is interesting? Do you think he's fun to play against, as well as fun to play? Am I totally off? Let me know. Do all the other YouTube pleasantries, and don't forget that fun is a finite resource.